Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, as well as what is it we could expect to be doing in the end times, because we all have a role. And as we've gone through the book of Revelation, where we are in the book is John has been taken up into the throne room of God, where he sees all these things going on. And he notices that God has a scroll in his hand, and there are 7 seals written on that scroll, and is determined that only Jesus is worthy to open that scroll and break those 7 seals. And as those 7 seals are broken, events take place on earth that are mostly caused by the evil hearts of men. But what is written within that scroll is the divine coming of God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. The second coming of Jesus Christ and his reign on the earth, his literal ruling on this earth. And that begins in the form of 7 trumpets by 7 angels. And all of those trumpet blasts lead to terrible events caused on the earth. These events are caused by God and angels being obedient to God. And as we get to that 7th trumpet blast, the return of Jesus Christ, there's a pause in the story where we're introduced to several characters. In chapter 12, we were introduced to the woman who is Israel, and she gives birth to a child who is Jesus Christ. And we're introduced to the dragon, who is Satan, and is trying to stop, essentially, God's rule on earth, because he wants to be God on earth. And that means war breaks out in heaven, and once he realizes that he is unable to stop the coming of Jesus Christ, he then turns his attention towards the saints and tries to kill them. And now we get to chapter 13, and we're introduced to the beast of the sea. Now, we're going to spend several episodes on the beast, because at no point am I going to say, well, here's who I think it is, or here's which country I think this person's from, until we get to the end of this chapter 13, and then I'll give you my 2 cents on it. But until then, we're just going to take it verse by verse. And we started in chapter 13, verse 1 last time, and that's where we're going to pick it up. Chapter 13, verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Now last time, as we were introduced to this beast, we referred back to Daniel chapter 7, where he also sees this beast and is explained to him. And mostly what we focused on last time was what this beast is doing, which he is declaring himself to be God. He will sit in the throne of the temple, declare himself to be God, and at that moment, there is then a 3.5-year clock that begins to tick. That is a war between the world and the Antichrist and the remnant of Jesus Christ, which is essentially Christian Jews and a multitude of Christians from other countries, nations, and tongues. And the Antichrist is going to essentially kill all of them. Now God protects them for 3.5 years, but in the end, the Antichrist will prevail and overcome them and kill them. And that's where we kind of turned our focus last time, because as Daniel saw this beast, that's how it was explained to him, was that this is what the end result is, the coming of Jesus Christ, and the saints will then rule on earth with Jesus. So it's a very victorious ending, and it's interesting how in Daniel they explain the victorious ending, which we'll eventually get to here in Revelation as well. But what is this beast? This is a crazy beast. So let's just go through it piece by piece. It has 7 heads, and it has 10 horns. And on its horns there are 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. So let's kind of pause there for a second, because in Daniel, an angel does explain to him what this is. So we're just going to go back to Daniel 7 again. It's very important, as we go through Revelation, a lot of times we, of course, go back to other prophets and hear, especially when other prophets have seen the same thing that John is seeing, which is the case here in 7. So we're going to pick it up in 7, and we're going to go to verse 7. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. And that's kind of what we talked about last time, like what is it doing here? It was different from all the other beasts that there were before it. And it had 10 horns. And I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots, and there, in this horn, were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. And then the angel goes on to explain to him what this fourth beast is after he tells him about the coming of Jesus Christ and the consequences of this beast being thrown into the fiery flames by Jesus. Because again, I want to reiterate, Revelation's a beautiful story. It has a beautiful ending. But we're going to pick it up now. What is this beast? We'll go to verse 23, Daniel 7, verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings. All right, hold that thought for a second. So what we're looking at is we're looking at a 10-king kingdom. All right, just kind of hold that thought, and we'll come back to it. The 10 horns are 10 kings, whom shall rise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. So ultimately what the angel is saying here is what you have is you have 10 kings from this kingdom. This beast is from. It's a world kingdom. So you have 10 kings that are coming from here. And then somebody essentially uproots 3 of those kings. They overthrow 3 of the kings, which then leads to the 7 that they have. They attack the saints, they overcome the saints, and they prevail. And this goes on for 3.5 years is ultimately what Daniel is saying here in Revelation, or in Daniel. So if we go back to Revelation then, kind of take another look at this beast here in 13, this will kind of hopefully come to make a little bit of sense here. Then I stood on the sand of the sea. Now, last time we talked about the sea. Now, this is a sea. There was a sea in the throne room of God. John is in the throne room of God. And typically, when something comes out of the sea, it's coming from the whole earth. It's different tongues, it's different nations, different tribes, different things. So this is a kingdom of the whole world. It's coming up out of the sea. And I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horn 10 crowns. So what you have is ultimately you had 10 horns, you had 10 crowns, but 3 of them have been uprooted, so now you have essentially 7 heads remaining in this beast. And on his head a blasphemous name. So what you have here is ultimately you have a kingdom of 10 kings, and 3 of them are overthrown by somebody. Now we're going to get into, as we continue in 13, there's more than one beast here, because Daniel saw a beast with 10 crowns, then another crown was raising up out of those 10 crowns. Now what John is seeing is these 10 crowns, and he sees the result of those three kings being destroyed. 3 of the heads are gone. They've been cut off. You had 10 crowns, now you only got 7 heads, but 10 crowns. And ultimately what they're going to do at this point is they're going to war against the saints. Now this second, or this little horn coming up that Daniel talks about, we're going to talk about the beast from the land probably in about 4 more episodes. It's further in chapter 13, but you know, the beast, the 10 kingdom beasts, or the 7 kings that are ruling this thing, one of them will be given some great authority, and we're going to kind of get into that, like who is that, like what's this one king all about. But then this other beast is going to kind of force everybody to worship that one guy. So kind of hang in there. But where we're at now is John sees a beast coming up, and what he's seeing is he's seeing the empire of the end times, and that is starting with 3 kings It's a world empire, or 10 kings. 3 of those kings are overthrown by just one, and now you're left with 7, and that's kind of where we're at now. They've warred against the saints. So we're just kind of get into next time, what's the leopard, what's the bear, what's the lion, what does all that mean? And then one of these is going to take a mortal head wound, and then everybody's going to be forced to worship him. So it's going to be kind of going to get crazy here in a little bit, but I just want to kind of keep it simple. A literal beast does not rule the world. What John is seeing is the spiritual beast that is ruling essentially these 10 kings, which ultimately 3 are overthrown, leading to 7. And eventually those 7 will run this new world order, and one of them will take a fatal head wound, and everybody will be forced to worship that one. So stay with us. Hopefully this video is helping. Again, the beast, I just want to take some time as we go through the beast verse by verse. We're looking at several chapters here. For sure all of chapter 13, and then we're going to get into it again in chapter 17 and 18. But when we get to the end of 13, it's all going to be crystal clear. But just be aware that the Antichrist stems from a new world order that will rule the whole world. It'll be composed of 10 kings. 3 of them will be overthrown by just one of those, and then 7 of them will remain. One of them will be forced to worship. So just hang in there, and I guarantee by the time we get to 13, all this is going to be crystal clear. We just have to take it verse by verse, and sometimes when you do that, it's not real clear until you get to the end of the chapter. So this is definitely going to be one of those cases, but all we're as long as you got this point now, is you have a new world order run by 10 kings. 3 of them are overthrown, 7 remain, and 1 will stand up and be the Antichrist and declare himself to be God. Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times and what it is we should be doing in the end times. Jesus tells us to have a heart for prophecy and to truly understand what our role is in all of God's plan, because God has a plan, and he has from the very beginning, and you're a part of it, I'm a part of it, and Jesus tells us to have a heart to understand what that part might be. Now, as we've gone through the book of Revelation, where we are, I can't go back and recap everything because we made it to 13, but roughly, John has been taken up in the throne room of God, where he's given a chance to look around, and he notices God has a scroll in his hand with 7 seals, and it is only Jesus who is worthy to open that scroll. And as those seals are broken, we see events take place on earth, mostly caused by the evil hearts of men. Once that scroll is open, what's written within the scroll is the divine coming of God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, just like the plan has always been laid out. And we see that in the form of 7 trumpets. And we get to, and as those 7 trumpets blast by 7 angels, events take place on the earth that they're pretty catastrophic. And these are caused by God and angels and those who do God's work for him. And then we get to the 7th trumpet, where it is the coming of Jesus Christ. And there's a pause in the story where we're introduced to many characters in this story. We're introduced to the woman, who is Israel, the child, who is Jesus, the dragon, who is Satan. And then we're finally introduced to a beast. And this beast of the sea is where we're at right now. Now, before we get into chapter 13 and the beast of the sea, I just want to remind you that all of chapter 12 clearly spells out that the dragon is trying to devour what the woman gave birth to. So the dragon is trying to devour Israel and devour Jesus and devour all of the offspring of Jesus. So that's you, that's me. It's a very clear message in 12. If you haven't watched the last couple episodes, it's very important you get this message that ultimately what takes place is the devil wants to be God. And war breaks out in heaven, and a third of the angels are cast to the earth, where now he is the prince of the earth, and he wants to set up his kingdom and not allow God's kingdom to be set up, so he will declare himself to be God. And he does that through a beast, and that's where we're at right now. So we're going to pick it up in chapter 13. We did verse 1 last week. We're going to go into verse 2, but we're going to go back to verse 13 as well. So we'll pick it up in 13, verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Now, I want to start off by talking about this beast and let you know that there's a lot of assumptions that are made in biblical commentary around the beast of the sea. We're not going to do that. We're not going to run along with mainstream media and say, well, somebody proposed this idea 50 years ago, therefore it must be true. There's a lot of ideas, and as you know, we don't use commentary in this series. We always use the Bible as a reference, because there's a lot of assumptions that can be made in the symbolism of this beast, because the beast is a symbol. He's a spiritual symbol of a world power run by humans. There's not actually a 7-headed beast running around with 10 horns that looks like a leopard and has feet like a bear and a mouth like a lion. It's a spiritual symbol, and it's very important we don't jump on bandwagons about the assumptions of these symbols. And it's very important that we don't say, well, because somebody said so, it must be true. We're only using the Bible as a reference here. So we're going to stay away from assumptions. Now, with that being said, using the Bible as a reference when we take a look at this beast is spelled out way more clearly in chapter 17. So, and I kind of said this when we first started on chapter 13, that we're not going to, I'm not going to say, well, here's who I think the beast is. Here's what I think it is. We're going to wait until we get to the till we get clear description on what this beast is, and just kind of get a big roundabout view of what this looks like. And then I'll tell you my thoughts, but I'm going to wait till we have all that crystal clear first. So with that being said, if we reference Revelation 17, which we're going to, we're not going to jump ahead a lot, and then if we also go back to Daniel 7, like we did last time, the 10 horns are 10 kings, period. It's clearly spelled out. Daniel, in Daniel 7, says they're 10 kings. Revelation 17 says they're 10 kings. So they're 10 kings. And then the 7 heads are 7 kingdoms. Now, that's kind of what we know so far, is we know that there's this beast. It's made up of 10 kings and 7 kingdoms, and that's about what we know right now. The dragon gave him authority, so we're talking about the Antichrist. We're talking about a world power that has been given authority by the devil to set up his kingdom on earth. So we got to be very clear on what the goal of this beast is. It's a savage, wild beast. As a matter of fact, if you look at the actual language, the Greek language here, when he says he saw a beast rising up, it's a wild beast is what they talk. It's savage, it's ravenous, and it has no mercy. It's bloodthirsty. So let's just kind of keep going. So right now, it's don't think, well, I got to know who it is, and I got to know what the numbers mean, and I got to know what all these, like, you don't. Like, just, it'll all be crystal clear by the time we get to the end. But right now, all you need to know is 10 kings, 7 kingdoms. That's all you need to know at this point. So let's go to verse 2. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Now, if we go back to Daniel, and we went deeply into Daniel, so we're not going to go back deep into it today like we did last time, so watch last episode. But Daniel sees 4 beasts, and the first 3 beasts are described as a leopard, a bear, and a lion. And then a different beast come out, and this is the kind of the same beast. Daniel sees this same beast, the beast of the sea, coming out with his 10 horns. Now I want to make that note because, again, I'm not going to jump on some assumptions here. What we're going to say is that it's fairly well known through looking at Daniel that these beasts that Daniel sees are empires. It's very well spelled out. These are empires. These are kingdoms. They're great kingdoms. Now, the reason they're even relevant at all in the Bible, there's a lot of kingdoms on the earth. The reason they're even relevant at all is because they hammer on Israel. God, the woman, Israel, that's what all this prophecy on earth is really kind of, it's like the ground zero of prophecy. So if there's a kingdom hammering on somebody on the other side of the world, it's probably not in the Bible. But when these kingdoms hammer on Israel, which has been the history of the woman or the history of Israel, so the devil's always tried to devour it. So we got Babylon, we have the Persians, we have the Greeks, then we have the Romans. These are all beasts that it's safe to say that they're kind of in there. Now, we can't say, well, the first beast was Rome and the second beast was Persia. We can't say that. There's a lot of assumptions to be made. So people grab like the symbols from flags, or they grab, oh, well, this, this particular country, used a symbol of this at one point, so it must be that. That's not what we're doing. Because it's not important that we go back and we interpret what the beasts of Daniel are. What we do know is that there were great empires on the earth, most likely Greece, Persia, Babylon, and Rome. But then when we look at these beasts, what we see is their description of their body parts resemble the beasts from Daniel. Now, that's important because, again, we're only using the Bible as a reference. So when we look at verse 2, now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. We can kind of see that this is a world power made up of Persians, Greeks, Romans. It's a world power. That's really a safe interpretation, because that's what Daniel saw as well, was he saw these world powers individually come up one by one. But then what John is seeing, he's seeing these world powers combined as one. And it's real important that we kind of see that this is a world power made up of 10 kings and 7 kingdoms. Now, right now, all we need to understand is that there's this beast coming up out of the sea. The sea is a multitude of people on the earth. Essentially, they come up out of the multitude of languages, tongues, and cultures. And we also see that in Revelation 17. So that's not an assumption. And we also see it in Revelation 4. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing a world power that is going to devour, for sure, Israel, but the entire planet. And it is made up of 10 kings and 7 kingdoms. And it's given authority by the devil. So this is not a good beast. This isn't like a world order that we can all run to and embrace. However, the world will embrace it. Or let's go back to 2. Now the beast which I saw was like the leopard. His feet were like the feet of the bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So this is a beast of the earth made up of leaders, kings, 10 kings and 7 kingdoms, given divine authority from satanic spiritual things. This is a bad situation going on here, because ultimately what this beast will do is, what Satan will do is he'll establish his throne in the temple in Jerusalem, and then that's when everything gets really awful. So we're just kind of introduced to who this beast is, this Antichrist, this satanic human who will then declare himself to be God. And the world will worship him. So all we need to know right now is we got a new world order made up of 10 kings. It's satanic in nature, and 7 kingdoms, and it will devour the earth, and it will declare itself to be God. So that's kind of where we're at. Now, where we're going to get into next time is we're going to get a little identifying as this beast. One of the heads is going to take a fatal head wound, and that's a whole deep subject, because again, the heads are kingdoms, not kings. So we're going to kind of take a look at what is going on with this fatal head wound in verse 3. Because there's a lot of identifying features about a fatal head wound. as humans, as we walk the earth, we can see that take place. And it'll be interesting to understand, well, what is that and what is happening with that? So I hope this is helping. I really just kind of want to take this episode and simplify it. We don't have to have all the answers right now. When I started the book of Revelation, it was really, I think, the third episode that through prayer, God just told me, just follow the path. Do not get off the path. And this is the first time, really, well, the second time we're introduced to this beast. It's the first time we're given any sort of description of the beast. But just understand that there's not a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns coming up out of the sea to devour the earth. It's a spiritual symbol of the satanic nature of what this empire will be like. So that's kind of all we need to see at this point. And again, stick with us. It'll all come crystal clear. You just can't jump to it. There's a lot of pieces of this beast still missing. But we'll get to them. We'll definitely get to them. We're going to spend a good amount of time on chapter 13 talking about the beast of the sea and then the beast of the land. And then once we get to 17, it's going to become crystal clear what's going on here and geographically where all this is located at. So love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm just kind of trying to keep the beast simple. I don't want to, we're not making assumptions. I just kind of want to say that again, is we're not going to say, oh, well, this is the Roman Empire, or this is, like, we're not making assumptions at all. We're just going to read the text for what it is. We're going to use only the Bible as a reference, and we're not going to jump on these commentary bandwagons that oftentimes Hollywood grabs a hold of, and then without understanding Revelation, we just assume it's true, and we're not going to make any of those assumptions. We're only going to determine who this beast is based on biblical text only. So love to hear your thoughts on all that. Put it in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support this channel through Patreon, that link is also below. We're now on Instagram, so join us there as well. The most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns, and as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.